This is part 66 of ASP.NET MVC tutorial. In this video, we'll discuss how to check or uncheck all checkboxes with another single checkbox using jQuery. We'll be working with the example that we started in part 65, so please watch part 65 from the ASP.NET MVC tutorial before proceeding with this video. Notice that at the moment when we navigate to the index view, we don't have a checkbox within the header. So if I have to select all of these rows, then I have to individually select each checkbox. Just imagine how much time it's going to take if I have 50 rows within this table. So we want to provide a checkbox within the header, and then if I select that checkbox, we want all the other checkboxes to be automatically selected. If I deselect the checkbox in the header, then automatically the rest of the checkboxes should also be deselected. Let's see how to achieve this using jQuery. So the first step is to reference the jQuery script file. Now at the moment, if you notice our MVC demo project, we don't have a script folder here, and we don't have the jQuery script file. Now if you create an ASP.NET MVC4 application using Internet Application Template, then you would get that automatically. Let me explain what I mean. So here I have fired up Visual Studio. Now let's say I'm creating a new project. So File, New Project, and then let's select ASP.NET MVC4 web application, and once I click OK, then we have a template here. Now when we created MVC demo project, we have chosen empty template. That's the reason why we don't have scripts folder within this project. But then if you select Internet Application and click OK, that would create an MVC application like this. And look at that, we have a scripts folder there, and then we have several jQuery files. And the jQuery file that we are interested in here is this jQuery-1.7.1.min.js. So this is the minified version of the jQuery file. So that's what we need. So let's navigate to that folder in Windows Explorer, and to do that, simply right click on the scripts folder, open folder in Windows Explorer, copy that script file, and then let's go back to our MVC demo project, and let's create a folder here, and let's call it scripts, and then let's paste the script there. Okay, so we have the jQuery script file. The next step is to reference that script file within our view. Okay, so let's drag and drop the script file. Okay, now look at this, it uses this syntax when we drag and drop that, but we know this script folder is present within the root directory of the web application project. So what I'm going to do is, instead of using this, I'm going to use the tilde character. Tilde indicates the root directory. Within that we have got scripts folder, and within that we have the jQuery file. Alright, so now let's write the jQuery. So let's use a script tag, specify the type as text/JavaScript, and the language is JavaScript. Okay, so within the opening and closing tag of this script, we are going to write our jQuery. And so let's start writing jQuery. Dollar indicates jQuery. So we are going to write a function. So let's close that. Alright, so what do we want to do? Now, for the first thing is, at the moment we don't have a checkbox within the header, so let's go ahead and include a checkbox. So this is the text that is displayed at the moment. Instead of that, we need a checkbox. So input type is equal to checkbox, and then let's give it an ID, and let's call it check all, because we're going to use that for that purpose. Okay, so with these changes, let's refresh this view, and the select text should be replaced with a checkbox. Now when I click this, all the checkboxes should be selected. If I deselect this, all the checkboxes should be deselected. So what is driving the selection or deselection? Clicking on this checkbox in the header. Okay, so when we click that checkbox, then we have to do something. So first of all, for the click event handler, we need to write the JavaScript. In order to fire the click event, basically we need to identify that checkbox control. And how do we identify the checkbox control? Using its ID, check all. And to find that, we use $. So we want to find this checkbox by its ID. So I'm going to use the pound symbol, the hash symbol. hash, and then what is the ID of the checkbox? It is check all. Okay, so once we have the checkbox, once somebody clicked on it, then we want to write another function. Okay, so what should happen when we click on that check all checkbox? Basically, the rest of the checkboxes should be selected if that is selected. If that is deselected, then they should be deselected. Okay, so what we're going to do now is find the ID of the rest of the checkboxes. Okay, so what is the ID of the rest of the checkboxes? That checkbox is present right here. So the ID is employee IDs to delete, and the name is also the same thing. Now to find these checkboxes, I'm going to use the name instead of ID, because if we use the ID selector, we're just going to get one checkbox with that ID. But we know that all the checkboxes in these rows have the same ID and same name. So we basically want to find them by name if we want to retrieve all of those checkboxes. So that's what I'm going to do now. Okay, and how do we find them by name? So again, dollar. So checkbox is an input element. So input, and what is the name of that? So I'm using this name filter. So find an input element with the name, whatever is the name. So what's the name of our checkbox? Employee IDs to delete. So take that and paste it right there. So find all the checkboxes which has got that name. And then what we need to do with those checkboxes, we need to set an attribute on that checkboxes. What attribute do we need to set? The checked attribute. Now one thing to keep in mind is, when you check this checkbox has an attribute, just like how it has got ID name, it has an attribute called checked. So if that attribute is set to checked, then that will be selected. Okay, otherwise it will not be selected. Okay, so let's set the attribute using attr function, and we want to set the checked attribute. Now, do we want to set this to checked or unchecked? That depends on the state of the checkbox that we have in the header. If it is selected, then these should be selected. If it is unchecked, then these should be unchecked. So the selection of these checkboxes depends on the state of the checkbox in the header. So this checked attribute value should be depending on the checked status of, we are saying this dot checked. So what does that mean? What is this referring to? This is referring to the checkbox on which you are clicking. So what is the checkbox that we are clicking on? The check all checkbox that is in the header. So if it is checked, then set that attribute to checked. If it is unchecked, set it to unchecked. It's as simple as that. Alright, so let's put a semicolon there, save everything. Let's go and refresh our view and see if it's going to work as expected. So let me select this. Look at that, all the checkboxes are selected. If I unselect that, all of them are unselected. Now look at this, we have everything selected. Now if I unselect one of the checkbox, then the checkbox within the header should be automatically unchecked. Similarly, if I don't have any of them checked, and then I start to check each one of them, and when I reach this point, I have only this checkbox to be checked. If I check this, then the checkbox in the header should also be automatically selected. Let's see how to achieve that. Now where is the click happening now? On the checkboxes within the data rows. Okay, so when somebody clicks those checkboxes, depending on whether if all these checkboxes are checked, if that's the case, then we need to have the header checkbox checked. Otherwise, don't check it. So let's go ahead and write the code for that. Alright, so find all the checkboxes which has got this name, okay, and the length, so the number of those checkboxes. Basically, even before that, when we click on any of the checkboxes which has got this name, then what should happen? We should execute some JavaScript, Okay, so what should happen at that point of time? We want to remove, so if everything is selected and if I unselect at least one of them, then the count is not going to match, in which case we want to remove this checked attribute of the header. Okay, so we're going to take this one and simply say remove attribute. And which attribute do we want to remove? Checked attribute. Alright, so let's save that. Let's go ahead and refresh this view and see if it works. Look at that, the moment I uncheck this, look at that, that goes away. And the moment I select this, it comes back. And then if I uncheck that, all of them gets unchecked. So we have the full functionality there. Now another thing that I want is, look at that, at the moment I don't have any client-side confirmation. So if I select a checkbox here and then click delete selected employee, that's going to delete that row. Now I don't want that. Before we actually delete the row, we want a confirmation box like this. Okay, so if I don't select any of the rows and then click that delete selected employees, then we should show a confirmation, no rows selected to delete, and once I click OK, nothing should happen. On the other hand, if I have a few of the rows selected and then once I click delete selected employees, depending on how many rows are selected, we should display this message, 4 rows will be deleted. If I click OK, the form should be posted to the server and the rows should be deleted. On the other hand, if I click cancel, then the form should not be posted and no rows should be deleted. Let's see how to achieve this. Again, this is going to be very simple and straightforward. Alright, so how are we going to achieve this? Now we need to find the rows count. Okay, so how do we find the row count? Depending on how many of these checkboxes in the data row are selected, we're going to find the number of rows that we want to delete. Okay, so how do we get access to those checked? Simply use this expression. That's going to give you, basically the number of checkboxes that are checked. Okay, but then when should that piece of code get executed? Whenever we click the delete selected employees button. So on the click of that button on the client side, that's when we need to execute the function that we are going to write. So first of all, let's include an ID for that submit button. At the moment it doesn't have an ID, so let's give it an ID and let's call it btn submit. Alright, so let's take that and then go back here and write the jQuery. So dollar, and then we want to find the element by ID, and if that's the case we use the ID selector, which is hash symbol, and then the ID of the element is button btn submit. And then when somebody clicks on that, what should we do? We should write a function okay, so what should we do? We should find the checkboxes that are checked, and I'm going to use a variable here, a JavaScript variable count, and we are going to initialize to that one. If that count is 0, so if the count is 0, then what should happen? We should get an alert box like this, no row selected to delete. Okay, and then it should just have that OK button. So we use the alert JavaScript function. So alert, and then we will simply say no rows selected to delete. And this alert box will just display OK button. It will not have OK and cancel. Alright. And then we don't want the form to be submitted to the server, so we want to return false. Okay, because there is nothing to delete, so there's no point in posting the form to the server. Alright. Okay, on the other hand, if the count is not 0, then what should happen? We want to display this message, number of rows will be deleted. Okay, so how do we get access to the number of rows? Now basically, to get OK and cancel buttons, then we need to show a confirmation box, and to show a confirmation box in JavaScript we use confirm function. So return confirm, and then what is the message, what are the rows? number of rows is present in this variable, so count plus rows will be deleted. Okay, so depending on which button you have clicked, if you have clicked on the OK button, this confirm function is going to return true. If you have clicked on the cancel button, then it is going to return false. If it returns false, the form will not be posted to the server. Okay, so let's go ahead, save everything, and let's refresh this view and see if it's gonna work. So I don't have anything selected. I click this button. Look at that, no rows selected to delete. I click OK, the form is not posted to the server, nothing happens. On the other hand, I select one row, delete selected employees. Look at that, I get one row will be deleted. If I click cancel, the form will not be posted to the server and nothing happens. On the other hand, if I click OK, the form will be posted to the server. That row is deleted. So if we select all the rows, click that, so 2 rows will be deleted. Click cancel, nothing happens. Alright, now we have seen how to reference a script file from the local folder here. So I have the script file here, and then we have referenced that in our application. Now Microsoft, Google, jQuery, all of these have actually hosted the jQuery file for us on their website. So if you don't want to have a local copy of the jQuery file on your web server, instead if you want to reference them from those servers, you can do that as well. So instead of having a script file here and then referencing that in my application, what I can do is I can have that URL. So here basically I'm using the Google version. Okay, so I can have that URL and then set that as the source instead of referencing it from our local folder. Okay, so since I am referring it from Google, I can get rid of the scripts folder altogether. Okay, I don't need that any longer. So I save this, I refresh this view, and the application should continue to work in the same way. Look at that, I select that, the jQuery is working. Okay, so basically now we are referencing the jQuery from that specific site, in this case from Google site. Alright, on this slide you can find resources for ASP.NET, C# and SQL Server interview questions. That's it for today. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.